everybody, and welcome again to another episode of the Risk Matrix 2025. James and I have now been doing this. I think we started in 2023, James.
2023.
And so we're in 2025. We're going to come up on our 100th episode sometime this year. We're going to make it something really special. We don't know what it's going to be yet, but we're going to have something really special. Today, James and I are going to talk about something that's near and dear, actually to both of our hearts, but very close to James. We'll get into that in a second. Everybody knows that we're powered by Veriforce. Risk Matrix is powered by Veriforce, but we also have a word from our sponsor for today's episode. Listen in.
Veriforce is proud to announce the latest version of our Safeland USA accredited course called Basic Orientation 7.0. This is our flagship course that has been taken by over 1.6 million students nationwide. The newest version of this course is shorter than the last version, with condensed training and updated multimedia, but it still includes the same topics as previous courses. As always, the Safeland orientation remains with the employee through the career. It eliminates the redundancy of multiple orientations, and it stores all the training records in a single centralized database for everyone to use. Also, we offer two solutions for getting the training. You can either seek out Safeland training from one of our third-party providers, or you can send one of your instructors through our Train the Trainer program to teach your own employees. If you're interested in learning more, please contact our training sales department at 888-482-9101. That's 888-482-9101, or you can email us at trainingsales@veriforce.com.
Okay, welcome back. Again, Dr. Martin and Mr. James Junkin here, my co-host for the Risk Matrix, as always, 2 years in. And James, today we've got a kind of an interesting episode planned for ourselves, and it revolves a little bit around some things that have happened to you over the holidays. So if you don't mind sharing.
Sure. I give good advice to other people, but I don't take advice extremely well. And in a push to get to the end of 2024 with all that we've got going on in our personal lives and our business life, 2024 was outstanding for business at Mariner Gulf, and a lot of exciting things happened with our team over at Veriforce. 2 days before Christmas, I end up in the hospital with a staph infection that started in my toe and spread all the way to my knee. And it really got me thinking, laying there in the hospital, unable to do anything, when doctors talking about cutting my leg off, at a minimum, my great toe. Fortunately, we didn't have to do all that. I still got to have surgery and some other things. They were able to beat the infection back. But it really got me thinking about, we focus so much as safety professionals on bringing workers home safe from hazardous jobs, right? That's our mission. That's our goal. That's our passion. That sometimes we forget about. We need to do things to take care of ourselves,
Right.
and our health and our physical health, our mental health. So I wrote an article that posted on LinkedIn. Y'all can go over and check it out. The imperative of self-care and mental health for safety professionals in 2025. So as you're planning out 2025, you need to plan out time to take care of you. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
So James, I'm gonna step it back a little bit and say this is not. It is a safety professional issue because we have some special things that go on in our life, some special stressors, some responsibilities that take us really deep into the lives of other people that kind of make us forget where our grounding is. But stress is a big thing in the workplace for a lot of people, right? And I recently read a book. I didn't write a book. I read a book called The Body Keeps the Score. Okay. And The Body Keeps the Score is about the things that we do to ourselves, or the things we experience in life, or the things that we experience and don't put to rest in our lives, just like PTSD and soldiers coming home from war, or PTSD in relationships. If we don't take care of it, the body somewhere in your system keeps the score, right? And so, let's talk a little bit about, since you brought up safety professionals, what are the unique pressures that we find ourselves under that kind of take us away from thinking of where we're grounded?
Well, I think a lot of things are cumulative. And I want to get that book, The Body Keeps a Score, because people have been telling me a long time, you need to take care of yourself. You need to get your diet under control. You need to get more rest. You need to take time for you. You need to do these things. But, I come from a generation of where you don't complain, you just suck it up and get after it. And if you made commitments, you respond to those commitments to the best of your ability.
Right.
You ride for the brand, if you will. And so, I've been ignoring these things for a long time, and they came home to roost. So that book, The Body Keeps a Score, I'm going to get that book. And I think that's probably one of the most profound statements I've heard on this particular topic. But, safety professionals uniquely, I don't think people really understand all that goes in from a toll standpoint to being a safety professional. Probably the worst thing that you and I have been exposed to in our practices, and others have as well, is exposure to trauma. We're routinely involved in the aftermath of accidents, of injuries, of fatalities, often having to bear witness to graphic scenes and dealing with emotional and psychological fallouts of those events. And
Take care of others during those times.
Absolutely. So, that takes a toll on a person. Maybe you witnessed it. Maybe you were there for that event and you know these people personally. In our practices, sometimes we know people personally, but a lot of times we don't know them personally. We're coming in as third-party consultants that are either part of rendering a professional opinion in some type of investigation or litigation, and we don't know them individually, right? But in a lot of cases, for the everyday safety professional, they know people that have been seriously injured. They know people that have been killed. They work with them on a daily basis. So, when you get involved in that, the sights, the sounds, the smells, everything that went on during that event can be deeply disturbing and have lasting psychological impacts. So I know firsthand, having been on scene when people have lost their lives, that takes an emotional toll, right? And it can be cumulative. It can be cumulative.
Can be.
Some people,
or you can not think that it's bothering you at all while you're there. You arrive on a scene, as I did several years back, and the body of the fatality is still on the ground, still being investigated. There are police, and it is quite frankly gruesome, right? And you don't think about it, but it comes back. It comes back with the next one. It comes back at odd times. So, I mean, these things weigh on you, right? And I don't want to discount the fact that, you mentioned, you're from the generation that you just suck it up, right? You're also from a generation that owns their own business, right? A set of people. You and I have the same kind of pressures. Yours a little bit more because you have a multi-million-dollar business, and I have a sole, a LLC, S corp. But the pressures are somewhat the same. The work comes in, and somebody's got to do the work, and that somebody is you. And deadlines are deadlines, whether there's one of you or five of you, right? And when you have money pressures outside the home, you have your own expenses, you have expenses from maybe possibly a divorce or things of that nature.
Unforeseen medical bills.
Unforeseen medical bills, like you, right? The pressure's on. And the body does keep the score, right? That's That's why we have a multi-million-dollar pharmaceutical industry that, is pumping us full of pharmaceuticals to keep us calm, get us going, pick us up, put us down. So I guess what you and I really aim to talk about is these pressures are there. What can we do about it?
Well, we'd had an episode previously about some of these so you want to get into safety consulting. And consulting can be lucrative. You can also go broke and lose everything you own trying to be a consultant. But a lot of times it's just like when you see somebody that owns any type of business and they seem to be doing really good in life. They have nice cars, they live in a nice house, they go on nice vacations. There's a price to pay for all that that's unseen. So if you're a would-be consultant, go back and check out that episode. I don't remember which one it was, but I think it was entitled, So You Want to Get Into Safety Consulting or something of that nature. But those are all pressures. And look, owning a business has its pressures. Working in a business has its pressures. Just living everyday life has its pressures. And but for the safety professional, I think the two biggest pressures that you have, and hopefully they don't come often, is when you're either on scene where somebody's been seriously injured or killed, or if you're even not on scene and you do what we do. We're going through documentation, paperwork, photos, videos, interviewing witnesses, doing all the things that you need to do to conduct an investigation. You get exposed to that enough, one of two things are going to happen. And I've had them both happen to me. You can either become desensitized to it, or you may have extreme emotional distress and moral anguish about it. I've been on both extremes
and the pay's the same, James. The pay's the same. Because internally, whether you become desensitized or you outwardly feel it, the body keeps the score, right? The body's immune systems go down. You become, fatigued, lack of sleep. All of those things accumulate, or so that something like what you have had this past couple of weeks can occur, right? That infections are opportunistic. Norovirus, opportunistic, right? COVID, opportunistic. If you have a good immune system, I'm not saying that you can't not get something, but you can at least be in a position where you're healthy enough to combat it.
That's probably what happened to me. I just got a little run down. Doesn't mean I'm about ready to hang up my guns and stop being a safety professional, but I am going to be more aware of what we do and the pace at which I do it. Because
let me ask you this, James. How many 7-day work weeks do you work?
Work every day.
Right?
Doesn't everyone?
Right. I'm the same way, right? Doesn't everybody work every day? I mean, I've got obligations and clients and jobs that I need to be on top of every day. So, when I do things that are good for myself, like go to the gym, right? And my trainer asks me, what are you going to do this weekend? My answer is, well, I'm going to work. I don't get a weekend. I don't get a weekend. I get to do certain things. I get to have time with my children and do great things. But there's always time for work every day. Every day.
You got to be willing to put it down. And in this article, I talk a little bit about that, about the power to say no. We all have the power to say no. Some of us don't have the ability to, right?
It's just like stop work, right? We all can stop work and we have the power to say no, but do we use it?
Exactly. Now, another stressor, if you will, that comes about for safety professionals is something I term moral distress. That's when you've got the challenge as a safety professional, and you come into conflict between what you believe is ethically and morally right to do and what you're constrained to do within the limitations of your workplace. Now, usually that's a clash that comes between the responsibility to prioritize worker safety and the pressures of organizational constraints like budgets. Everybody's doing budgets this time of year, production demands, staffing concerns, things like that.
Management's pressure on safety metrics or safety non-metrics.
So, I know a lot of safety professionals I've talked to over the years. It just adds more stress, right? You know what you need to do. You may not have the authority to implement it, but there's this frustration, right? Because management doesn't see it the way you do, or they don't have the budget to do it. This happens all the time, particularly small companies, especially when it comes to training, right? So when you get toward the end of the year, what gets cut? Things that are not of an immediate need. Even if they may be regulatory required, a lot of times you get cut back on training and you know that you need to train people and they're like, yeah, well, we'll get them in the first quarter next year when the budget comes around, things of that nature. That creates a conflict, a moral conflict, right? And you have that stress, even though you have no authority or ability to change that situation. You can certainly make people aware of your opinions related to that situation, but that creates more stress. And I've talked to more safety professionals about this one issue. I know what needs to be done, but nobody is listening. James, I feel like I'm outside in the yard screaming to the heavens, and no one is responding to what I'm saying. So, for those of you that are safety professionals and for executives that listen to this podcast that hire safety professionals, understand this is one of the costs of those decisions, right, that are made.
So what do we tell people, right? I've told people that are in that situation, I say, well, then you got to find a different way to say it, right? Which is more stress, right? Because you got to find a different way to say it, or you got to find a different person to say it to, or a different avenue to bring it to the masses in order to have it be heard. More stress, right?
Or,
So let me ask you this question, James.
Mm-hmm.
I know you work for yourself, right? So I don't know how Marina Golf does vacation, but I know that as an owner, you can take your vacation whenever you see fit. How much vacation have you taken in the last year?
3 weeks.
Okay. Some people know that I teach full time for Columbia Southern University, and I get a fair amount of vacation, and I've taken 2 weeks of vacation. And that wasn't even completely off. That was 2 weeks of vacation from teaching, not from everything.
Well,
I've
see,
not taken full
I
vacation
don't
this
come
entire
across that
year.
I'm complaining. I enjoy working. I love what I do. And sometimes I've not mastered the work-life balance concept. I've not. Others have. And so, like I said, again, a lot of this, we could have an audience of one today, and that one person could be me. Because when I sat down and wrote this article, I really didn't write it for everybody else. I wrote it to me. So we can continue to provide good service, but at the same time, doing so without sacrificing health. Right? And I just went down and made a list of all these stressors that come up as a consultant, as a safety professional, not having authority, not having influence. I've never understood, if you're going to pay me as a consultant and I'm going to bill you for
You're
my
not going to listen.
advice, I give it to you, and then you don't want to do it. That makes about as much sense as going to an attorney asking for their legal advice. They give it to you and you decide to do something else. If you were going to do what you were going to do anyway, why waste the money, right? So when you're passionate and you care about getting workers home safe, and I see this prevalent all throughout the profession, right? All throughout the profession, there's this frustration that builds that I don't have the authority necessary to implement the safety changes, even though I have the expertise and the knowledge and the experience needed to do so. So it just builds. It just builds, right? So
I love that you love what you do. I love what I do too. I really do like what I do. But that work-life balance has to sometimes supersede what we love, right? So let me give you an example. I might love to ride my bike, which I do, right? And I might love to ride it every day. And I'm so obsessed with riding my bike that I start riding at 100 miles a day, right? At the risk of everything else in my life, right? Because I love it so much. Not only will my body keep the score, right? But the rest of my obligations will keep the score and enact themselves upon my body with the stress of not keeping up with those things, right? So you can't love something so much that it hurts you. There's a good relationship advice too, right?
well, that's right. That's right. One thing that we share, whether we're consultants or whether we are working for companies directly, there's not a safety professional out there that doesn't have a heavy workload, tremendous responsibilities, and has to work long hours, right? Whether you're doing I tell people all the time, a lot of people think, oh, only thing safety professionals do is check PPE. Hell, I wish all I had to do was go around and check somebody's PPE. Put your hard hat on, put your safety glasses on. We're doing hazard assessments. We're doing going through and doing site inspections. We're writing policies and procedures. We're doing training. We're doing incident investigations. We're having communications with all of our management teams, with the other stakeholders that are involved.
Keeping track of all that stuff.
And just the sheer volume of work for most safety professionals, coupled with you got to get this done, right? That can lead to chronic stress that can be cumulative, and then you just build it up, right? And that gets compounded by taking work home, working on the weekends. And I'm not the only one that does this, right? A lot of people do this. Working during off times, canceling
holidays,
vacations, postponing doctor's appointments. My doctor got all over me, man. I ain't been a doctor in 2 years.
Yep.
Right? Because it's always something that seems to come up that was more important. So we're going to talk a little bit about, you got to schedule things. And so as you're looking at 2025, and there has to be a stop. There has to be a stop. But I've always been this way since I was in my 20s, right? It's just how I'm built. I'm going to ride for the brand. We're going to get it done because I enjoy accomplishing things, but you got to also have some balance in there.
You like doing the work. You like the accomplishment of getting things done. You like winning cases. I mean, that's one of the things that I think you and I bond over, is that we like to do a good job, and we like to quote unquote win in our lives. And winning to us is a job well done, right? But we also need to take some cues from people like our doctors and our friends and our family. And we can talk about that maybe on the next episode. We can talk about things that we need to do in order to protect ourselves. I think that's maybe for another episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just hoping today that as we say these things, it's ringing a bell in a lot of our listeners' heads that, hey, man, I do work a lot. I work a lot off the clock, work a lot.
I take my vacation, but I still work.
I take my vacation, but I still work. Or I don't take vacations. I'd like to do some type of research amongst safety professionals that get PTO, paid time off, right? And I wonder how many of them in the year with PTO still on the books, right?
I have 4 weeks vacation saved up.
Well, there you
that
go.
I'm going to lose.
So it's a balance. Even though you like what you do, you're not feeling burnout, these things can be cumulative. because not only have you got to do your day-to-day work, you got to stick up, or you got to keep up with the regulatory complexity and accountability. There are new rules. You remember the HS is only part of it. There's an HS and E part that comes up all the time, would change.
Another S, sustainability.
Sustainability, a lot of that's gotten in safety professionals' laps. So,
security,
professional development that goes along for a lot of these different certifications, scheduling those things out. And you got to do all that with often limited resources and support. That's where coming in and understanding the ROI of safety and being able to communicate it so people understand that you're adequately staffed. Man, a lot of companies I do business with have about one safety professional per 150.
That's about right.
The worst I've ever seen, I did an assessment on a company 3 years ago. They have 9,000 employees across the United States. They have 3 safety professionals. One's in office and 2 in the field. Wow. And their injury rates reflected it. They reflected it. And the organizational culture, like we talked about, that can be a stressor too. If you have poor leadership, they're not supportive. You don't have good communication across channels. You're always in meetings, but no one seems to be listening. A culture that undervalues safety, that can have a significant impact on the mental well-being of safety professionals. We talked about this in another podcast of ours, where we discussed knowing when it's time to go. Knowing when it's time to go. So I would say if your job is making you sick, it's probably time for you to go. But is your job making you sick, or are you making yourself sick?
Or are you making yourself sick?
Right?
Exactly.
So my job didn't contribute to this. This is me, right? It's me because I like to get up early, drink coffee, and jump right into work.
You make
work, right? And part of that's my management style too, which could be improved. So look, I'm not preaching at anyone. I'm preaching to myself, right? Conflict resolution and difficult conversations often become the role of the safety professional, right? You see it all the time. Safety gonna get that check. Safety gonna get that check. And I've always said it's not the safe. If you're making your safety professionals go out there and discipline workers, write workers up, potentially terminate workers, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. But many places you see that.
Right? On the safety professional as well.
They end up having to do that. So, that can be emotionally draining. When you have to go out and you have to talk to people, even if you're not in the discipline side, you're correcting unsafe acts, unsafe working conditions. So, conflict resolution and having those difficult conversations, that's all part of the job. All these things we're talking about are part of the job that really doesn't come out in a job description, or you see it on people's CV, right? I'm really good at conflict resolution and having difficult conversations, and also responding to serious injuries and fatalities, and making sure we protect the individual, but we also protect the company and get to the true root causes so we can put things in place, and also get everybody drug tested, and also get everybody trained, and also go do professional development, and also find time to.
And then somebody says to you, what do you do all day? We don't see you doing anything. What do you do all day?
What do you do all day? Absolutely.
So, because that one thing that they wanted done didn't get done that day. So there's a stressor for you. So why don't we table the solutions for the next episode? Because I think you probably have done some soul searching with this article that you wrote. And I mean, I've heard you say a few things already, a few ticklers of things you're going to do better in your life, so that the body keeps a good score as opposed to a bad score. Because in your case, you had me worried. I'm sure you had your wife worried. I'm sure you were worried. right?
Hey,
And
I'm not sure I'd
you know,
look good as a pirate.
there well, there are and there are responsibilities on the people around you too, that care about you, that should be, they should be saying more, um, taking the heat. I could have said more too to you, but I didn't, right? Because I think, well, who wants me all up in their business as a friend, right?
Well, here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to not fulfill my responsibilities and obligations. I'm not going to stop volunteering. But what I am going to do, and we'll talk about this in the next episode, is make sure that I'm prioritizing time for me and my health. And that's both physical and mental, right?
Yep.
And we'll talk about in our next episode some of the consequences of neglecting self-care, neglecting it, and then what you can do about it to help not only myself, but others out there in the safety profession continue to practice for many, many years while still being a good husband, a good father, a good friend, good brother, right?
100%. So, but I feel like we're ending on a sad note, but we're not, because you caught what you had going on in your life, soon enough to take care of it. And this is a wake-up call not only for you, but also we'll be able to tell our listeners some of the things that can be done in order to make sure that the score that the body's keeping is a good one and it's positive in your favor and not negative. So with that said, James, I don't know what episode this is,
Might be
but
wounded, but I'm not out. Okay. We're still pressing forward on the Risk Matrix Podcast 2025. If you've not checked us out, we got about a year and a half's worth of material going back into the Risk Matrix. It can be found on YouTube under the Veriforce channel or over on Spotify. Go over there, hit that like button. Hey, if you've dealt with these issues, we want to hear about it. I'd love to talk to you about the challenges you've had and how you've overcome them, because that's what we're here to do. Share amongst professionals, share amongst colleagues, so we all get better in fulfilling our mission to get workers home safe from high hazard jobs. But let's remember, we're one of those workers too. So go over there, hit our like button, hit our subscribe button, follow the Risk Matrix, get down in the comment side, engage with us. We'd love to hear from you.
you want to come on the show, let us know.
Absolutely.
You can find us on LinkedIn. You can hit us up at our emails. You can comment on the Risk Matrix. We get all of those reach outs. Let us know what you think. And until next time, James.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.